Imagine being at your most difficult moment, with no money and no hope, and suddenly a simple choice changes everything. He was just a poor kid on an old bicycle, but what he did that day changed his life and that of a millionaire forever. You'll never believe what happened. Have you ever heard of fate? Sometimes it comes so unexpectedly that it's impossible to ignore. That's exactly what happened when a 16-year-old with nothing but a generous heart crossed the path of a man who seemed to have everything. But appearances can be deceiving, and their meeting is proof of how an act of kindness can change the world. Lucas was only 16, but he was already carrying the weight of a life that seemed unfair from the start. He was the eldest of 3 brothers, living in a small neighborhood on the fringes of the city. His responsibilities went far beyond his years, especially after his father lost his job as a laborer in a local factory. The situation became even tighter when his mother, who worked as a seamstress, had to take on double shifts to make ends meet. Even then, the money wasn't enough. Dinner often consisted of hard bread with coffee, and Lucas felt the guilt of eating in the knowledge that his little brothers might want more. Despite everything, he never complained. Lucas was the kind of boy who turned difficulties into fuel to keep going. He worked delivering newspapers early in the morning, before going to school, and even did odd jobs at weekends, washing cars, carrying groceries, or helping neighbors with simple chores. All for a few coins that he handed over entirely to his mother, without hesitation. He could see the tiredness in her eyes, the way her hands were always bruised from endless days of sewing. Lucas wanted to ease that burden. But he had his dreams. Deep down in his heart, Lucas wanted something greater, to study, graduate, and give his family a decent life. He dreamed of becoming an engineer, fascinated by the machines and the small repairs he made to bicycles in the neighborhood. At night, he studied by candlelight, with books borrowed from the school library, while the sound of gunfire and shouting sometimes cut through the silence of the community where he lived. Still, life always seemed to put obstacles in his way. On that particular morning, Lucas was late delivering the newspapers because the tire on his bicycle had gone flat the day before, and he didn't have the money to buy a new one. Creatively, he improvised, tying the tear with a strip of old rubber he found in the trash. It wasn't the ideal solution, but it was enough to keep the bike going for another day. As he pedaled along the dirt road that connected his neighborhood to the rest of the city, the cold morning wind hit him in the face, but he didn't mind. Each delivery meant another small victory, another step towards putting bread on the table. It was then that he noticed something unusual, a luxury car parked on the roadside. It was a shiny, modern model, the kind of car Lucas had only seen on television or in crumpled magazines that the owner of a convenience store threw away. As he approached, he saw a middle-aged, well-dressed man, visibly irritated as he tinkered with a flat tire. The man seemed out of place there, as if the place didn't belong to his world. Lucas slowed down, not knowing whether to stop or keep going. He only had a short time before his boss started complaining, and every minute lost meant one less delivery and, consequently, less money to help his mother. For a moment, Lucas considered ignoring the scene and continuing. After all, why should he, a poor kid, worry about someone who clearly had everything? But then he remembered what his mother always said, "It doesn't matter how much we have or don't have. If you can help someone, help them. That's priceless." With this phrase echoing in his mind, Lucas stopped his bike, leaned it on the ground, and walked towards the man. He felt his nerves growing. After all, the man seemed impatient and angry. But Lucas took a deep breath, wiped his greasy hands on his old uniform, and asked in a polite tone, "Do you need any help, sir?" The man looked up, surprised. He looked at Lucas for a moment, as if he didn't know what to expect from a skinny boy, wearing worn-out clothes and with a bicycle that was visibly in poor condition. "Do you know how to change a tire?" he asked, the skepticism in his voice evident. Lucas just nodded positively. Changing tires was something he did often, whether on his bike or helping neighbors with their old worn-out cars. He wasted no time. Without saying much, Lucas knelt down beside the car, picked up the tools that were scattered on the floor and got to work. As Lucas turned the wheel wrench with precision, the man watched. He noticed something different about the boy, a determined look, as if this wasn't just a trivial task, but an opportunity. The silence between the two was filled only by the metallic sound of the tools and the wind that blew lightly that morning. Lucas worked with skill, but he still felt the weight of the situation. He knew that if he stopped to help, he would miss at least 3 deliveries. What would he say to his boss? How would he explain the delay? But at that moment, he chose to ignore his worries. For Lucas, helping was more important than any scolding or delay. A few minutes later, the job was done. Lucas stood up, wiped his hands on his uniform and took a step back, indicating that the car was ready to go. The man, who until then had seemed unimpressed, looked at the boy with a mixture of curiosity and respect. "Thank you," he said, somewhat disconcerted. Lucas smiled. "No need to thank me. I just wanted to help." And with that, he got on his makeshift bicycle, ready to continue on his way. The man stood still for a moment, watching the boy ride away. There was something about Lucas that he couldn't explain. An honesty, a genuine kindness that made him wonder why someone with so little was willing to help without asking for anything in return. And it was at that moment that something inside him changed. He knew that this apparently simple encounter was more significant than it seemed. Lucas, for his part, pedaled back to his route, unaware that that choice, that small act of generosity, was about to change his life forever. Lucas set off again, pedaling with the same determination as always, unaware that that choice, that small act of generosity, was about to change his life forever. For him, helping that man was just another natural choice, the result of the values his mother had instilled in him. He didn't expect anything in return and didn't even think that this brief encounter would have any repercussions on his life. However, fate seemed to have other plans. Meanwhile, the man in the car, Marcos, drove on, but with a restless mind. He was a successful businessman, used to living in a world of negotiations, meetings, and numbers. But that simple boy, with worn-out clothes and a makeshift bicycle, had stirred something deep inside him. Marcos couldn't stop thinking about the way Lucas worked, efficiently, without asking for anything, without even hinting that he expected payment. He knew dedication and honesty when he saw it, and it stuck in his mind. Throughout that day, while Lucas faced the boss's scolding for delaying some deliveries, Marcos was also busy, but on a different kind of task. He made some calls, gathered information, and, with the help of contacts in the city, began to find out more about the boy he had helped. It wasn't that hard to find clues. After all, a delivery boy with a mended bicycle and a sincere smile wasn't exactly common. Marcos found out where Lucas worked and even where he lived. At first, he thought of simply rewarding him with money. That's what he used to do, solve problems with checks. But something made him hesitate. He realized that money, however useful, wouldn't truly honor the generosity Lucas had shown. He wanted to do something that would have a real impact, something that could change that boy's life in the same way that simple gesture had changed his heart. Meanwhile, Lucas' routine continued as usual. He continued delivering newspapers in the morning, studying at night and dreaming of one day giving his family the life he believed they deserved. But the challenges kept coming. Later that week, his mother was diagnosed with an illness that required expensive treatment, something completely out of the family's reach. Lucas, who was already feeling overwhelmed, saw his hopes falter. He began to consider dropping out of school to work full-time and help with the medical bills. It was then that Marcos reappeared. One day, while Lucas was out delivering newspapers, he saw a familiar car parked near his house. It was the same luxury car he had helped him with on the road. Before he could understand what was happening, Marcos got out of the vehicle with a discreet but confident smile. He introduced himself formally and, to Lucas' surprise, started asking questions about his life, his aspirations, and the challenges he faced. Lucas, although surprised, answered sincerely. He talked about his family, his younger brothers, the constant struggle to put food on the table, and his almost impossible dream of becoming an engineer. As he listened, Marcos felt a mixture of admiration and compassion. Lucas' story made him see something he himself had forgotten: the value of determination and kindness, even in the face of the most brutal adversity. After hearing everything, Marcos revealed that he hadn't just come back to say thank you, but to offer an opportunity. He owned an engineering company, and although he couldn't promise an immediate miracle, he wanted to help Lucas take the first step towards his dream. Marcos offered the boy a full scholarship, covering all expenses, from school supplies to transportation. In addition, he guaranteed an internship at his company as soon as Lucas was ready, allowing him to learn and practice and build a solid future. Lucas was in shock. He could hardly believe what he was hearing. For a moment, emotion almost prevented him from speaking, but when he found his voice, all he managed to say was a shy but sincere "thank you very much." That offer was more than he could have imagined. It was a ticket out of a life of limitations, a chance to change not only his own destiny, but also that of his family. From that day on, Lucas' life took a different turn. He dedicated himself to his studies with even more intensity, knowing that every high mark, every extra effort was a way of honoring the trust Marcos had placed in him. But the path wasn't easy. He faced the suspicious gaze of colleagues, who didn't understand how someone so humble had managed to get such a rare opportunity. He also had to balance his studies with the responsibility of helping out at home, especially looking after his mother. At the same time, Marcos also faced his own battles. He realized that helping Lucas was only the beginning. He began to get more involved in community initiatives, investing in projects for young talents who, like Lucas, just needed an opportunity to shine. It was as if Lucas's gesture that morning had lit a new flame in him, a new understanding of how true success is not only measured by what you accumulate, but by the positive impact you leave on the world. Their fates were now intertwined, and they both knew that this unexpected exchange of kindness was not just a coincidence. It was the start of something bigger, something that would change not only their lives, but also the lives of everyone around them. The day everything changed came unexpectedly. It was a sunny afternoon, months after Marcos had reappeared in Lucas' life with his generous offer. Lucas, now more confident and determined, was on his way to his internship at Marcos's company, carrying with him a project that he had developed with weeks of effort. It was an idea that he believed could bring significant improvements to one of the systems the company worked on. Despite his lack of formal experience, he had studied every detail, reviewed the notes, and even consulted old books he had borrowed from a community library. When he reached the meeting room, Lucas noticed something different in the air. There were more people present than usual. As well as Marcos and the engineers he already knew, other important figures were there. Investors, directors from other divisions, all of whom seemed interested in something big. Lucas hesitated for a moment, feeling the weight of expectations. He wondered if he had gone overboard in wanting to present his idea. After all, who was he, a boy from humble beginnings, to be standing there in front of such experienced people? But before he could give up, Marcos called him forward, encouraging him with a firm, encouraging nod. He knew that this was a crucial moment, not only for Lucas, but also to show everyone that the decision to invest in this young man had been the right one. Lucas began to speak. His voice was shaky at first, But as he plunged into explaining his idea, a natural confidence began to emerge. He presented a more efficient system for reducing waste in one of the company's industrial processes, using more affordable materials and an innovative design that he had developed himself. It was an ambitious project, but at the same time practical and detailed. As Lucas spoke, the room fell silent. Even the investors, known for their impatience, were completely attentive. He showed graphs, prototypes, and data that proved the viability of his proposal. However, the turning point came when he revealed that, to build his prototype, he had used recycled parts that he himself had collected and adapted with borrowed tools. The humility and effort behind that project touched everyone in an unexpected way. When he finished his presentation, silence filled the room. Lucas, his heart pounding, didn't know what to expect. He looked at Marcos, who was smiling proudly. The businessman was the first to applaud, and soon after, the sound of clapping echoed throughout the room. It wasn't just a polite gesture, it was genuine approval, a recognition of the talent and determination Lucas had shown. But the climax was yet to come. One of the investors, impressed, asked Lucas how he had acquired so much technical knowledge without any formal training. Without hesitation, Lucas told his story. He talked about the difficulties of his childhood, the daily effort to balance studies and work, and how an act of kindness from Marcos had transformed his life. He didn't hide anything, and his raw honesty moved everyone in the room. It was then that one of the company directors stood up. He looked at Marcos and said something no one expected. "Marcos, you've found a diamond in the rough. If he can do this now, imagine what he'll be able to achieve when he has all the resources he deserves." The director then turned to Lucas and made a proposal that changed everything. Not only did he approve the implementation of Lucas' project, but he also offered a special mentoring and professional development program so that he could continue to grow within the company. In addition, another investor, visibly touched, offered to finance Lucas' higher education, ensuring that he had access to the best possible training. Lucas was overcome with emotion. He tried to hold back his tears, but the magnitude of the moment was overwhelming. He looked at Marcos, who was visibly moved too, and realized that this wasn't just the result of his efforts. It was proof that sometimes the simplest human connections can generate extraordinary changes. From that moment on, Lucas was no longer just an intern or a boy with a distant dream. He had become a source of inspiration, not only for those in the room, but also for his family, his community, and even for Marcos, who now saw Lucas as a constant reminder of the transformative power of kindness and determination. The boy who once fixed a tire on the side of the road now had in his hands the chance to build something much bigger than he could ever have imagined. Lucas left that room with the feeling that he had crossed an invisible portal, a point of no return where his former simple life seemed as distant as a forgotten dream. He was no longer just a kid helping his family survive on what little they had. He was now someone recognized for his talent, his determination, and his story. The weeks that followed cemented the change. The project he presented was not only approved, but became a pioneering initiative in the company, receiving praise from various sectors. But more than that, the opportunity to study at one of the best universities and be mentored by the biggest names in the business was definitive proof that his efforts had not been in vain. However, the most exciting thing for Lucas was not the professional success or the doors that opened, but the way he was able to give back to his family and his community. With the salary and resources he now received, he began to invest in his siblings' future and in small social projects to help other talented young people like himself. He didn't want anyone else to have to choose between a dream and survival. Marcos, for his part, remained a constant figure in Lucas' life. The businessman saw in the young man a more resilient version of himself, and the friendship that emerged between the two was something neither of them had planned, but which became an unbreakable bond. Lucas never forgot where he came from or who was by his side in his most difficult moments. He knew that without that seemingly trivial meeting on the side of the road, none of this would have been possible. And so, Lucas' life became a powerful testimony to what can happen when talent meets opportunity and when kindness generates an endless cycle of transformation. He was living proof that a simple act of helping others can change not only the lives of those who receive, but also those who give. After all, what began as a flat tire ended up as an engine of change. For him, for Marcos, and for everyone who crossed their paths. And for those of you who like a good story and watched it to the end, leave your comment below. I stayed until the end. And there's one more thing. Have you ever wondered if a simple act of kindness could change your life forever? Imagine defending someone, thinking nothing of it, and the next day, a Mercedes shows up on your doorstep. Get ready. This story will change everything you think about family, love, and retribution. A boy defended a poor woman on the bus. The next morning, a Mercedes came to his work. That's the theme of the video that's fixed here on the screen. Just click and watch. I'll see you there.